Hello. Thank you for joining me for the Teen Anxiety and Depression webinar. This is the first time we're doing a webinar at Steiner Family Chiropractic, so this is really exciting. So thank you for joining and thank you for taking time to listen to this. This is a really important topic to talk about. It's kind of a hot topic today. There's just so many teens that are struggling with anxiety and depression, and it kind of makes sense when you look at, there are different pressures on teens today, even when different than 5, 10, 15 years ago. And they're just super busy. There's so much on their plate, and they really just don't know how to deal. And I love taking care of teenagers in the office because it's just such an important and really exciting time in their lives. They're really at a crossroads to becoming adults. They're no longer kids, but they're not yet adults. And, they're making a lot of decisions that are going to impact their future in a big way. So it's really fun to be a part of that journey with them as they make these really great decisions. And it's really fun because they also start to take real ownership of their bodies and the decisions they're making for their bodies. So that's really exciting. For the first time in their lives, they have their own responsibilities. So it's just a fun group of people to take care of in the office. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about the different causes of stress as it pertains to teens in particular. And so, any adaptation, any negative adaptation in behavior is more than likely due to an increased load of stress on their system. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the teen presentation of anxiety, the teen presentation of depression, and then the differences between, an adult presenting with the same. And then we're going to talk about a really important shift that happens from a child that suffers with a lot of stress to a teen that has really high stress to an adult that has really high stress. And it's really important to compare and contrast those. And then, of course, we're going to talk about chiropractic and how chiropractic has anything to do with this conversation. So I am Dr. Randi Steiner. I'm a chiropractor here at Steiner Family Chiropractic. And I am a prenatal, pediatric, and family chiropractor. And like I said before, I love taking care of teens in the office. They're just some of the most fun. And really, they're making these decisions to become viable parts of society. I ask parents what they want for their teens, and most often what I hear is that they want their children to thrive, and they also want them to become viable parts of society, contribute, give back, become positive aspects of whatever community they're in. So really fun, really excited to talk about this tonight. And like I was saying, teens are really starting to take ownership of their body and realize, that it is their responsibility, and so kind of figuring that out. So as a chiropractor, I love talking about stress. And, there's all different types of stress, and that's basically what I talk about all day, every day with all of my patients. So stress can be physical, it can be chemical, or it can be emotional. So we're going to go through those different types of stress and see how, what kind of stresses teens in particular are dealing with today. So physical stress, we can go into the teen athletes who are playing a sport every season and through the summer. So they're really just being physically stressful to their bodies. And that can be a really positive thing, but there also can be such thing as too much and not taking care of our bodies. So that can be really physically stressful to teens today. Posture. Text neck is a real thing. So we're looking down at our phones, we're looking down at our computers. Maybe in the classrooms we're slunched over, our shoulders coming forward like this. That's just not conducive to neurospinal health. So posture in teens today is just not the greatest. And then lack of activity. So on the opposite side of, the athlete that plays a sport every season and is going from practice to practice to practice, there's also the teen that would prefer just to be in his room or her room and behind a computer screen playing a video game. So all the kids are coming in talking about Fortnite. I really have no idea what that is, but they come in and they do the different dance moves they learn from Fortnite. So apart from when they're dancing to Fortnite, video games, a lot of times you just get drawn in, you get sucked in, and you're just in this poor posture for hours at a time. Emotional stress for teens today. So like I said before, they're really at a crossroads of kind of figuring out who they are, and that can be really, really stressful for the teens. You know, who am I and where am I going? Those are huge questions to be considering, and especially for an immature teen, that can be really stressful. We're learning as teens how to connect with our peers. So because we're so connected virtually, a lot of times when these teens are then, you know, face to face with people, it's really stressful for them because they have to make eye contact and they have to, you know, communicate face to face rather than just on a computer screen. So that actually is very stressful for teens. Peer pressure is huge, obviously. You know, what are you wearing? What are you doing on the weekends? You have these pressures from all of your teens, from all of your peers as teens that you're kind of trying to live up to. And then, of course, social media. And I think I could do 6 or 7 different webinars just on social media. And social media is really, really great for a lot of things. It can be a positive thing, but it also can be super negative, and it can be detrimental to teens in particular. It's just, you know, we're living our lives through these Instagram filters, and we're living according to these unattainable standards, and we're just living our lives literally going day to day saying, how can I get the next cool Instagram post, or how can I get this person to snap me back? And it's just really, it can be very detrimental. It can be extremely stressful for our teens. And there's actually, you know, chemically speaking, in our brains, the satisfaction of likes is actually a real thing that we can get addicted to, because dopamine is released every time we get a like or a comment or a snapback. And so we literally get addicted to that and think, how can I get more? How can I get more? Which can be very dangerous. And then bullying kind of goes along with that social media, but you know, the kids are no longer on the schoolyard bullying one-on-one. It's behind a computer screen, a lot of times anonymously, and it can be multiple people coming at you at once. And it's so scary to think, you know, of these teens dealing with this nowadays. So it's just very different and can be very, very dangerous. And of course, emotionally stressful. Relationships. So teens are navigating a lot of different types of relationships at this moment in their lives. So that's their relationship with their parents, and then it's their relationship with their friends, and then maybe now is the time that you have your first boyfriend or girlfriend. And so navigating those relationships can be very, very stressful for teens. Time management skills. So they have a lot on their plate, and so they have to keep track of where they're supposed to be when, and that's really tough. And sometimes they overbook themselves, and sometimes they underbook themselves, and so they're kind of just all over the place. And there can even be the teen who just completely forgets what they're supposed to be doing at any given moment. So testing. So there's a lot of testing that goes on at this moment in their lives, as far as, you know, SATs and PSATs and ACTs and all of that, and then your regular high school load, and then college prep is the next one that can be extremely emotionally stressful, because not only do you have your pressure on your own self, but you have your peer pressure, and then you have maybe pressure coming from your family. So what college are you going to? Are you going to college? All of those types of things can just add a lot of stress to our systems. And then decisions. It is no secret that teens don't always make the greatest decisions, but they are now learning that there are consequences for those decisions. So they're learning the consequences of getting their first speeding ticket or skipping class and things like that. And teens have to balance the school, work, and personal life balance. So, you know, as adults, we often talk about the work personal life balance, but these teens have an added thing of school. So they just have a lot on their plate that they have to balance, and that can be extremely emotionally stressful for them. And a lot of times they just don't know how to deal with that. And then going into chemical stress. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about junk food. Teens love their junk food. It could be that video gamer that just sits in front of the computer eating Cheetos all the time, or it even could be, you know, the athletes that are so busy and going from practice to practice that the quickest and easiest thing to do is to go through the drive-through, and that's where they're getting a lot of their meals. And it's no surprise that what goes in comes out. So we need to be putting good things into our body, but a lot of times teens just aren't doing that. Maybe the teens are making unhealthy choices on the weeknights or weekends with their friends, and I'm talking about maybe drinking or experimenting with drugs, and I don't have to really explain how that can be chemically stressful to a developing teenager. Sugar cravings are real in teens, so they're always reaching for the sweetest thing, and that can be very detrimental to their health and very stressful to their bodies. And then toxic makeups. So the young girls, they are wanting to wear makeup and experiment with makeup, but a lot of times they don't have a lot of money to be spending on that. So they go to the drugstore and buy the cheapest makeup, but a lot of times that's the one that has the most chemicals that are harmful to our skin, which is then harmful to our bodies. And so a lot of times those chemicals can cause hormonal imbalances that can be very harmful to teens. So that's something that I wanted to bring up as well. So teens really need at this moment to be learning about healthier choices, because it's literally setting them up for the rest of their lives. The choices that they begin making on their own now is really how they're going to continue making choices throughout their life. So we want to make healthy choices. So what happens when we experience all of this stress? So I just talked about the different types of physical, emotional, and chemical stress that teens today are experiencing, but what really happens in the body? So in the central nervous system, it is broken into two parts that I'm going to talk about to kind of describe how the body deals with stress. So there's one part of the nervous system that I will call the fight or flight. It's the innate protective mechanism of the body. And then on the other hand, that works inversely related to the fight or flight system is the growth and development or rest and digest nervous system. So we want to be inversely related, and we want that stress response, that protective mechanism, to turn on when we experience stress. But when that stress is gone and we are able then to adapt to that stress, we want that growth and development nervous system, that rest and digest, to turn on. I'm going to use an example of a caveman because that's an easy way to understand. So think about a caveman sitting at the lake eating his berries for lunch, and all of a sudden he looks over his shoulder and he sees a bear running after him. So his innate protective mechanism, that fight or flight, is kicking on, and it is saying, I am either going to fight that bear to save my life, or I'm going to fly as fast as I can in the opposite direction so that I can save my life. Once he decides whichever one he's going to do, hopefully he runs as fast as he can and the bear just gives up. Then he's able, when he's safe, to just sit and relax and digest those berries that he was eating and maybe take a nap because he's so tired from running away from that bear. Now, unless you're like me and live in New Hampshire, you're probably not running from a bear on a daily basis, but our stresses are different. And so it is that physical stress to our body. It's that emotional stress that teens are experiencing so much nowadays. And it's that chemical stress that kicks on that protective mechanism, that fight or flight. And what happens is that our bodies are meant to be self-healing, self-adapting, and self-regulating mechanisms. But when we have so much stress and that protective mechanism has to be turned on so much, we can actually get kind of stuck in there. So, and when we get stuck in there, we're not able to adapt, we're not able to regulate, and we're not able to cope with the stress that comes at us the way that we normally should be able to. So now I'm going to talk about the teen presentation of anxiety, go through some of that just to be aware of. So of course, the teens that are struggling with anxiety are experiencing a lot of stress. They're saying things like, I am so stressed all of the time. I am so stressed. They maybe are adopting, avoidance or just shutting down. And that's kind of like that flight part of that mechanism that I was talking about, that innate protective mechanism of the fight or flight system. That avoidance or shutdown is kind of them just flying away from the stress and trying to ignore it and acting like it's not going on because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to properly cope and adapt. The teens that are high energy overachievers a lot of times are struggling with anxiety because think about all of that pressure. If they're the straight A student and they're the star athlete, there's not only a lot of pressure on themselves, but there's also a lot of pressure from their peers and from their family to maintain that status. Exhaustion. And yes, teens love to sleep a lot more than adults do, but it's that teen that sleeps all the time, but then wakes up and is always saying that I'm exhausted. And that is because there is so much stress coming into the system that all of their energies are being used up to kind of fight off that stress or to deal with that stress as best that it can. And a lot of times these teens that are saying they're exhausted all the time are getting sick all the time because their bodies don't have any energy to fight off what it should be able to fight off naturally. The teens that are struggling with anxiety oftentimes are not opening up. So again, they're in that protective kind of overly stressed fight or flight mechanism, and so they're closed off and they don't want to open up to anybody. They have a lot of emotional outbursts. So this is kind of like that fight part of that protective mechanism. So they're blowing up over absolutely nothing, and they're kind of like emotional roller coasters. And, you know, their systems have just been allowed to boil up with all of this stress that all of a sudden they just explode out of nowhere. Emotional unpredictability is just like that. So, you know, one moment they may be angry, and then they're happy, and then they're crying, and then they're saying they're overwhelmed, and then they're saying, I got this, I'm good. It's just very all over the place. You don't know what to really expect. And that, you know, can come with those teens that are experiencing those high levels of anxiety. Low self-esteem and low confidence. So it's literally like a movie reel playing over and over in their head, you know, that they don't have that high self-esteem, and it's that negative self-talk. And then because of all of this, those teens with anxiety are going to develop unhealthy coping mechanisms because they just don't know what to do with all of the stress. So that may be drinking, that may be attention seeking, but it's really, really important to understand when these kind of warning signs or when these presentations are cries for help for those teens that are experiencing a lot of anxiety. Because like I've been saying, all of the stress is going on in their body, but they don't know really what to do with it, how to deal with it. So, they're just anxious all of the time. So then the teen presentation of depression. So it's similar to the presentation of depression in adults with a few differences. So teens with depression are going to be withdrawn. They're going to be tired. They're going to lack motivation for anything. They're going to have performance issues. So maybe that's, you know, with their grades or relationships, or maybe their sports or activities, or even their friendships. They are disconnecting from everything. So any way that they could have any connection, because of all of the stress that has been allowed to just kind of stay in their systems, they just want to completely disconnect from any of the connections that they have. They lack participation in almost everything because they're lacking that motivation. So they're not participating with their friends when they should, or going to school when they should, or participating as much in school, or not choosing to participate in the activities or sports that they usually would, and then even family stuff. And yes, we understand that some of this stuff that I'm talking about is just being a teen, but really the way that I'm talking about it is when it's in an excessive state. Teens struggling with depression are going to have low self-confidence and low self-worth. So rather than those teens that are experiencing a lot of anxiety that have low self-esteem, these teens with depression have low self-worth. So they just do not believe they are worthy or deserving of much, or if anything. And depression in teens can lead to suicide attempts. And a lot of times we don't know how bad a situation is until the attempt. So a lot of times these teens were so connected virtually that you can kind of follow the trail back to kind of see clues leading up to the event. And this is really scary stuff. And I wish that I didn't have to talk about this. I wish this wasn't a reality in our world, but it is. And so I believe it is part of my job to open some eyes on this and to let those people that are struggling, let those parents with teens that are struggling know that there may be a different way to help their teen. And then a teen with depression is going to lack those healthy coping mechanisms as well. So how to better deal with all of the stress that's coming at these teens? Of course, it's to choose healthier choices. And so chemically speaking, you know, choosing the good, healthy, organic foods, choosing the cleaning products or lotions and makeups that don't have all of those bad chemicals in them. Emotionally, of course, choosing positivity over negativity, maybe limiting the amount of time you spend on social media every day, all of these things. And then physically, we can decrease that stress by working our bodies out in a good way. exercise is so important for our health, but that can be excessive and it can be extreme. So using our bodies in healthy manners and really taking care of our bodies. So now I want to talk about that shift that happens between a child with high stress to a teen with high stress to an adult with high stress. So when a child is experiencing excessive and high stress, they don't have any coping mechanisms and they are unaware of what is going on. So their reactions are all over the place, off the walls, but it's accepted because they're a kid and we realize that they don't know what's going on inside their bodies and they don't have any way to cope or deal with it. Shift to when a teen is experiencing high stress, they have the awareness that something weird is, or something out of the abnormal is going on in their bodies, but they don't have any mature coping mechanisms. So, teens are basically immature adults. So they know something is weird, they know something's not normal, but they don't know what to do about it. They can't, regulate themselves. They can't adapt. And so then shift to when an adult is experiencing high stress, they have the awareness of what's going on, and they also have the awareness enough to have those healthy coping mechanisms. However, this can lead to adults, choosing the unhealthy coping mechanisms, but that is more accepted as adults, whether it's drinking or abusing drugs. So it's not going to get a teen like it would a teen thrown in jail on the weekends, but it is more socially acceptable for adults to be doing that. So really the golden thread through all of what I have been talking about, if you haven't guessed it, is stress. So all of this stress on our systems. And so now I want to talk about chiropractic and what that has anything to do with what we've been talking about. So unfortunately, we chiropractors cannot make your teens mature any faster, which I'm sure a lot of parents would love that. But what we can do with the chiropractic adjustments is to decrease that stress level. So every time an adjustment is given, what it does is it kind of stimulates that growth and development, that rest and digest part of our central nervous system to decrease that stress level. And when we do that, we get out of that stress mode, that constant protective fight or flight mode that we get stuck in because we experience so much. The adjustments help to kick on the opposite, the growth and development, kind of that rest and relaxation, to get out of that mode and cycle. Chiropractic helps to decrease that stress, get you out of that mode, and literally breaks that cycle of stress that we have been stuck in. So breaks that cycle of fight or flight kicking on all of the time and not being able to adapt. So we are decreasing that stress. We're getting rid of that old way of being stuck in that cycle. And then also we're increasing our self-awareness. So a lot of times when teens start getting adjusted, they're better aware of what is going on with their body. They're better aware of saying, I know that this is causing me a lot of stress. They recognize their stressors. And so they're making more conscious choices to avoid those stressors and choose the positive rather than the negative. And then chiropractic adjustments help with organization, coping, and adapting to that stress. So there's really not a whole lot we can do. Teens are just experiencing a lot of stress. I wish I could take some of that away, but I can't. But what the adjustments can do is allow the body to better adapt to that stress, organize all the signals that are coming in, and then be able better to be self-healing, self-regulating, self-adapting bodies. And so when we do all of this, what we get is we get different results with those teens that are experiencing anxiety and those teens that are experiencing depression. And those different results are happier, healthier teens. And I can pretty much guarantee that when we have healthier, happier teens, we're going to have happier, healthier families. So if any of this resonated with you and you're curious about the next step to take, please send me a personal message, give the office a call, or send me an email at info@steinerfamilychiro.com. And what we will do is set up an assessment to see just how well your teen, or maybe you, are dealing with all of that stress. We are able to tell right here in the office how well your nervous system is adapting to that stress that is coming at it at all times from all angles. So I would love the opportunity to do that. Please reach out to me. And if you have any questions, again, please just reach out to me. And I really appreciate everybody being here. And please, if you want a recorded link to this webinar because you know someone that could benefit from this information, please share it with others and send me your email address and I will send that link right to you. It's important to get this information out because we want those happier, healthier teens. So thank you again, and I look forward to the next webinar.